Now we're going to talk about a second part in chapter 5, and these are covalent compounds that are called organic compounds. Um, Generally, in the nomenclature we've discussed so far in lab, we've focused on inorganic compounds. So what's the difference? An organic compound contains carbon and hydrogen. Sometimes there's some other elements in there, such as oxygen. But there's a whole class of these compounds that are called hydrocarbons that are only contain carbon and hydrogen. Excuse me, and the simplest hydrocarbons are alkanes, and I have a table of them here. And I mentioned that early scientists thought that organic compounds only came from living things, and thus the name. They had to come from an organism. Well, that has been disproven. There's a lot of chemical companies that now make organic compounds. Nonetheless, that was the original thought and the source of the name. So here's a series of alkanes, 1 carbon through 5 carbons. Methane is the same thing as natural gas. You'll see the carbon is bonded to 4 hydrogens. And if you think back to the Lewis electron dot for carbon, is you had the C with 4 dots around it, meaning it could make 4 bonds. And here it has made 4 bonds with hydrogen. When you look at ethane, one of the bonds on the carbon is to another carbon, so it only has 3 left, so it bonds to 3 hydrogens, and so on and so forth, going through propane, butane, and pentane. I mentioned methane is natural gas. Of course, we know propane is also a fuel. Propane is normally a gas. However, when you buy a cylinder of propane to use it with your barbecue, say, that is pressurized to form a liquid because they can sell you a whole lot more that way. And then you have a regulator that allows it to expand to a gas for use. Butane is a liquid, and we know that because if you buy a butane lighter, you can see the liquid sloshing around in there. Another thing that you might want to know about organic compounds is they often have these functional groups, and the functional groups determine how the molecule reacts, and that's why they're important. There are 4 listed here: the alcohol, the aldehyde, the carboxylic acid, and an amine. If you are going to go on in chemistry, let's say you're going into life sciences, or you're going to study chemistry, you're going to be a chemie, you will take a year class, 2 semesters of organic chemistry. It's a very large portion of the study of chemistry. The other thing we're going to talk about are hydrates. Now, hydrates are compounds that attract water, and in fact, they have a specific number of waters that collect around them. This is not a matter of them dissolving, it's that they absorb water and they kind of will clump up. And an example is copper sulfate. It has 5 waters associated with it. So it's called copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. The formula shows 5 waters with a dot product in the middle to show they're just associated. They are not bonded. Here's a list of 4 other ones, and magnesium sulfate is one that you may have heard of because it's often used to dry other liquids, because you put that in there, it'll pull the water out of the liquid. And the other interesting thing about hydrates is that you can, we know they exist because you can drive the water off. So in copper sulfate, once you drive the water off, it changes color. It originally is blue and it goes back to white. And when it is dry with no water, it's considered anhydrous. Where you may have seen this is if you have ever seen those cute little birds that dip back and forth and tell you how much humidity you have in the air. They change colors. If that's high humidity, the copper sulfate picks up a lot of the water out of the air and the little bird turns blue. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. Kind of cute. Okay. Um, Here is a list of some other familiar inorganic compounds: water, ammonia. Dry ice is carbon dioxide, which is solid. um, you know, calcium carbonate, same thing as chalk or marble. Once again, depending on that crystal structure. Magnesium sulfate is also what we call Epsom salts. So there are a lot of these compounds that we will study that you actually will run into often in day-to-day life. All right, and we will move on to the next section.